Hello, everybody. Tom Sykes, the Royalist here. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, NICO HINES, the Global Editorial Director for the Daily Beast. We are trying for the first time to stream simultaneously to YouTube and Substack. So very much hope that it's going to work. And of course, we are here today to talk about the new Epstein files that have just been released by the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee today. So it's absolutely pretty much, I think, bombshell is one way to sum it up. Nico's in DC. Nico, what's the mood like there in response to these revelations today?
Well, I think febrile would be a good word. This is absolutely what Donald Trump did not want. Obviously, on this show, we're talking about things from a kind of Prince Andrew point of view. But, you know, over here in the US, the Donald Trump aspect to all of this is absolutely gripping the nation and has been for the past year. And what's fascinating is that it's caused a real disconnect between Donald Trump and all of the people who voted for him. Lots of those people who voted for him were desperate for Donald Trump to rip the secret, the cover off, and to show all of the real truth about what was in the Epstein files, what Epstein was really up to, what he was up to with Prince Andrew and Virginia Giuffre all of these years, and that everyone assumes is in the FBI dossier. And that Donald Trump and his supporters especially, and his son, Don Jr., was really big on pushing this, promised would be released as soon as he was re-elected president. He seems to have now changed his mind, especially since, as we've just found out today, his name features again and again in these emails, which we're now seeing. And although today is, as you say, a bombshell, and we get at least 3 very intriguing mentions of Trump, and each of those emails will set more and more reporters up down new alleyways and exploring new angles over the next few days. But what's really interesting about today is that it's also the day that the Democrats got the votes that they need in the House of Representatives to be able to force the release of the rest of the Epstein files. And so in the minutes and hours after these emails were dropped by the Democrats, Donald Trump has been furiously phoning around to former supporters of his. Well, I say former supporters, most of them do still support him in other ways, but there are lots of Trump supporters who are going against the Republican wishes and are saying that they will vote with the Democrats to force these Epstein files to be released into the public, because they believe that there's an elite institutional cover-up, and they have gone against their master Donald Trump, and they are promising to vote and to release these files. So what we're getting today is just potentially the tip of the iceberg of what is potentially going to break over the next few days and weeks here in DC.
Wow. Certainly some of the bits I was reading earlier, and obviously it's a hugely dense emails all sort of jumbled together. They've pulled out a few of them in a press release for us to read. Some of the ones I was reading were not entirely complimentary about Donald Trump's intellect. Shall I just put it that way, that I saw? But anyway,
the trouble with Donald Trump is that whenever, it's always been the case, this has dogged him throughout his career, that anyone who knows him best and who spent time working with him are the people who hate him the most. And when you see, unguarded comments between friends who know Donald Trump, they talk about him in the most awful way. And I think there's a similar theme with the more and more that we hear about Prince Andrew. I don't know, maybe you could fill me in on which Andrew elements have been roiling up the discourse most in London today.
Yeah, so of course the Epstein connection has been nothing but trouble for Andrew. They were introduced by Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Epstein's girlfriend or colleague or secretary, we don't quite know, but they were definitely that was the bridge by which these two men met. And for Epstein, I think it was probably a very useful connection. For Andrew, it's turned out to absolutely ruin every aspect of his life, not least because he has continuously lied about his relationship and his connections with Epstein. And when he finally gave this famous interview in 2019 to Newsnight to sort of finally try and clear the air, of course, it was an absolute disaster. He said that he didn't regret meeting Epstein, didn't express any sympathy for his victims whatsoever. And of course, most famously of all, pretty much insinuated, I mean, he didn't actually come out and say that the photo with Virginia Giuffre was fake, but he pretty much came out and said that this photo, which I'm going to try and get up on the screen for you now. I'm sorry, I don't have my brilliant producer, Ben, with me today, so you have to forgive me any technicals. But that photograph, Andrew basically said that it was fake and that there were all kinds of reasons given why this couldn't have been a genuine photograph. Andrew said that he had chubbier fingers than were seen in the photograph there at one stage. Now, he didn't say that in the interview, but he said that his friends said that to me that was the kind of one of the lines that they pushed. Andrew famously said that it couldn't have been him because in London, he wouldn't have worn these kinds of traveling clothes. This was not how he liked to dress when he was in London. And also her account, she said that he was sweating when they were dancing in Tramp. And he, of course, famously said that he wasn't able to sweat because he'd had such bad PTSD from the Falklands War, which was sort of a kind of clever way to remind us perhaps of his one moment of glory and dutiful service to the country in the Falklands War when he flew decoy helicopters and came back a great hero. And of course, the most notorious excuse of all, that he'd never met Giuffre and had no idea who she was. And anyway, he couldn't have been there that night because he was at Pizza Express with his children in Woking. But the reviews of Pizza Express in Woking since are something to amuse you on a wet Wednesday afternoon in November. But so he's always consistently denied having any knowledge or relationship with Giuffre. And it's true, when you speak to friends of Andrew, they will tell you this. They will tell you he just simply says, I've never met her. I don't know who on earth she is. I've got no recollection of her at all. The trouble is that, and I was speaking at the time of the the trial because Giuffre sued him in a civil case after he said that on Newsnight. And I was told by one of the lawyers working for Giuffre, the moment he said he'd never met her, they won the case, because he said from that point on, all they had to do was prove that Giuffre and Andrew had been in the same location at any time, and whatever credibility Andrew had would simply fall away. So it was very interesting that then what finally precipitated Andrew losing all his titles was that the Daily Mail published an email dating from February the 27th, 2011. And this was about 3 weeks ago. And we'll get to what's in the new Epstein files in a moment, but it's important to understand the sequence of events. So on February the 27th, the day after that photograph was published in the Daily Mail, and Andrew was claiming that he had absolutely no idea who this was, he emailed Epstein saying, I'm going to try and do something clever here. No, not clever enough. Not clever enough. Let me try again. He emailed saying, we are in this together, and keep in close touch, and expressed a wish to play some more soon. So that was on the 28th of February. Now, lots of people have said that doesn't sound particularly like the response you would make if you'd been pictured with somebody that you thought you had never ever met. You would probably say, who on earth is this person? You wouldn't say we are in this together. So what was revealed today is this email. Excuse me. Sorry, Ben, we need you so much. So he gets basically this is the culmination of an email, and this has just been, so for those of you just joining us, what we are talking about is this massive dump of Epstein files today by the House Oversight Committee. And Nico has been talking about it from the perspective of the Donald Trump angle. I'm really more interested in the Prince Andrew angle. And this email is, I think, just so stinks of Andrew's entitlement, his desperation to save his own skin before anything else, his denial that he's done anything wrong or anything. So this is the end email of a long sequence of emails where the Daily Mail or the Mail on Sunday email all their allegations, which are amply repeated in Virginia Giuffre's new memoir, published posthumously, because unfortunately she took her own life earlier this year. And so the Mail send all these allegations, which as journalists you always do, you put it to the person and give them the opportunity to respond. They send all these allegations, very detailed, very graphic, very lurid. They go back and forth. And finally, they go to Andrew, and Andrew's response is, "Hey there, what's all this? I don't know anything about this. You must say so, please. This has nothing to do with me. I can't take any more of this." Now, what I find really interesting about this is that this email is dated March the 4th, right? But we know that on February the 28th, he was saying, we're all in this together. So it really kind of stinks to me. And I feel there's just something, there's a little bit more to this email. I just wonder whether it was just slightly intended for, with an eye to, would it ever leak out, to make me look, oh, what is all this? What is, what it is, Andrew?
It does make him sound absolutely awful anyway. I mean, he's clearly, even when there's this huge scandal, let's not forget this was all in the public. I think one of the crucial parts of seeing these emails between them is that one of former Prince Andrew's kind of claims all along was that, oh yes, he had known him in the past, Jeffrey Epstein, that is. But once he realized, what a wrong 'un he was, that he distanced himself or severed ties. But of course, we can now see from all these emails that as the allegations were publicly known around the world, he was still as thick as thieves with him, saying we're all in this together and trying to plot how they should deal with the PR fallout. I mean, if nothing else, this is proof that he was part of the conspiracy to try and cover it up, right? He's trying to plot with Jeffrey Epstein of how they can try and downplay this story in the papers. And crucially, all he really cares about is that he's personally sick of it. He can't take any more, and he wants to save his own skin.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Nico. It's like that he's trial running. It's very crude trial running of the media strategy, isn't it? This is going to be Andrew's media strategy. I don't know anything about it. It's got nothing to do with me, and I can't take any more of it. It's so unfair. But it's really interesting what you say about the media strategy, because then there's another bit that I found in another one of the emails. So this is from Epstein to a New York City publicist called Peggy Segal, who was quite a big deal back in the day, and I think works in a lot of film and stuff, and may have had well, I'm not going to say because I can't remember for certain. I don't want to defame Peggy Segal. And she is communicating with Epstein, and to judge by this email, which has been published today by the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee as part of this big Epstein file dump. Epstein say this is talking about Virginia Giuffre. That has now been established. The White House has admitted that that Giuffre was the person who met Donald Trump. So this is Epstein's response to the story. Now look at the date. We're now in July. Okay, so the first photograph was published February the 27th. Then in March, the actual whole story is published with the photograph, the Sharon Churcher story with the photograph, etc., etc. And this is Epstein's response. I think a great opportunity has arisen. Just like the headlines of a hotel maid now proven to have lied in the Strauss-Kahn case. That refers to Dominic Strauss-Kahn, who was hauled off an aeroplane at JFK, I think, when he was trying to be accused of sexual assault. The girl...
I was in DC, living in DC at the time, and had to jump on a 3 a.m. train to New York to cover Strauss-Kahn as he was pulled into court. It was extremely dramatic at the time. It was like one of the very biggest, very early Me Too stories, and it was absolutely huge in the US. I mean, it was reported in the UK and in Europe, but it was dominant over here in the news, because he was this huge, powerful figure who worked at the IMF and was thought to be a kind of universe boss hero. And he was brought down by this allegation from a maid at a hotel. And the maid alleged that he had raped her and sexually assaulted her. And it was subsequently, doubt was cast upon the evidence that had been given against him. Who knows how she was lent on, or how that came about, but he was kind of almost cleared in the court of public opinion. And it's just fascinating to see that Jeffrey Epstein somehow still thought that there was hope that either he or Prince Andrew might be somehow cleared and absolved of blame for all of this stuff.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, that he's looking at Strauss-Kahn as the playbook, basically. He's going, this is the playbook, like, let's just... So now the context of this is that he's been having a conversation with Peggy Segal before about whether she can get a story into the Huffington Post. And they're talking about Ariana Huffington, and he's written a load of jumbly. A lot of Epstein's emails are like mad jumbly, all mixed up. And she sends him a message saying, I think I understand what you're saying, but if you could, try and put it in comprehensible terms with that I can read and understand, I'll forward it to Ariana Huffington at the Huffington Post and see if she wants to run it. So this is his distillation of trying to, take a moment to spell it properly. And obviously before the era of Grammarly, Nico, but he says, the girl who accused Prince Andrew, i.e. Giuffre, can also easily be proven to be a liar. Now, this is the astonishing bit. I think Buckingham Palace would love it. You should task someone to investigate this girl that has caused the Queen's son all this aggro. I promise you she is a fraud. You and I will be able to go to Ascot for the rest of our lives. I mean, that just about, if it's absolutely, and it's, on one side, of course, it's kind of, I don't know, there's something almost comedic about its grossness. But when you think of the context of, all these people who were traumatized and abused, and it's wound up with somebody actually taking their own life, mother of 2 children. I mean, it's, it's horrific that actually what he was actually thinking about was how he could discredit her and get to wear a top hat in the royal box at Ascot. Yeah. And I think this could be a really, really dangerous email for Buckingham Palace. Why did he think Buckingham Palace would love it? Did he just come up with this off the top of his head, or had he spoken to Andrew about trying to discredit?
Yeah, I think there's lots of layers to this, isn't there? Because I think you have to assume that he has been speaking to Prince Andrew. The bit where he says the Queen's son, that to me, that's so crucial, and something I want to come back to actually, because one of the questions always with this is, why is Andrew the Queen's favorite son? What is going on with that? Let's come back to that one. But for at this moment, it seems to me, okay, this guy's a liar and a trickster and a con man in various different ways. So perhaps he's invented it all. That's one reading of this.
Yeah,
I think it seems much more likely that he's right, that Buckingham Palace do want to make this story go away. Because let's remember at the time, I mean, you give me much better, you please fill us all in, because you'll remember it in much more detail. But from what I remember, The Queen was very slow to act on this, right? She didn't want to throw him out. She didn't want to do all the things that have subsequently happened in the last couple of months with him losing his title and all of that stuff. The Queen very much did not want to do that sort of thing. Those options were available to her, and she was delaying and delaying and delaying, and presumably hoping that something like this would happen, right? That her darling boy would be absolved of guilt, because you can bet that Andrew was telling his mum that it was all false, right?
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting as well was that last week or 2 weeks ago, you actually saw this line coming out of the court of King Charles, that they were blaming Queen Elizabeth. And in the Sunday Times, there was massive briefing quite clearly from Charles's camp saying that the Queen had left an unexploded bomb under Charles's throne, and, by not dealing with Andrew and being too indulgent of Andrew. And yeah, they absolutely wanted it to go away. They sat on it and did nothing. And then the best attempt that they had to make it go away was then when they decided to pay off Giuffre, subsequently revealed that a key part of that payoff was a 12-month gagging clause, so that she couldn't speak during the Diamond Jubilee, or the Platinum Diamond Jubilee. And of course, also, I think at that stage, everyone knew wouldn't speak until the end of Queen Elizabeth's life, because Queen Elizabeth was not well. She'd had bone cancer for many years. It was kind of a miracle that she lived until the Jubilee weekend. And then really only a few months after that, she finally succumbed. And so, yes, absolutely, Buckingham Palace wanted nothing more than this to go away. And I think that I actually don't accept that. I think that Charles was equally responsible, because it was a co-monarchy for the last 7 years of the Queen's life. Like, he fired her private secretary. He was a guy called Christopher Gite. Charles took over a lot of the strategic control. A lot of the big decisions were routed through his office. So I actually think it's pretty outrageous of Charles to try and blame the Queen for it. But it should have been dealt with during her reign, under her name. It shouldn't have been left hanging around. Yeah.
And if Charles was smart, he would have seen that he was leaving a bomb for himself, right, to deal with. He should have got out ahead of this and said, now's my moment to get rid of this, right? And I think, coming back to your reporting recently, it was Prince Andrew that's twisted Charles's arm even now, right, to take this action. So maybe that somehow feeds in. And so that briefing about the Queen then becomes even more disingenuous if you sort of play it back to yourself.
Well, I think the one thing that we can all conclude from the King's behaviour over the past 3 years is that he is not smart and he is not a strategic thinker, because the Queen handed him the public perception of a monarchy that hadn't put a foot wrong for 70 years. 3 years later, the thing's in chaos. They've got record low ratings, and it's just been disastrously handled from one moment to another. We have, even this thing of King Charles. Of course, the British newspapers have very dutifully said that King Charles was steely and made a decisive decision. Well, I mean, it's complete nonsense. I mean, he made a decision on the one Friday that then 2 weeks later he had to come back and make another decision to actually do what had to be done. And I think that when you see these emails coming out, I think it makes me understand two things. It makes me understand, number one, why it's going to be much better if these emails are about somebody called Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, with a hyphen, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, rather than about someone called Prince Andrew. But it also makes me understand how incredibly weak and foolish and how badly the King has handled this, because this is going to end up with a demand for Andrew to be investigated, for him to be criminally investigated. It's very clear to anybody with half a brain that any normal person in this situation would have been invited to spend a night at the local police station. And it's incredible that hasn't happened, because we know that all men are not equal before the law. We know that life's unfair. We know the world's unfair. We know it's a stitch up. We know all those things. But they have to at least try and pretend that it's fair. They at least have to try and pretend that they are just ordinary men like any others before, God and the courts and all these other, marvelous institutions of state that they support. And I genuinely, I think that these new emails, they are hard to go through. And I have actually put the link in my Substack page. If anybody, any good citizen journalists want to have a crack at going through them, they are hard to go through, but because they're just very dense and the emails sort of stack up on top of each other. But I would be very surprised if Buckingham Palace did not have a team going through them tonight, trying to figure out exactly what the implications are for the palace, what the damage might be, and have they gone far enough with Andrew? I don't know if they have. And now they're giving Beatrice new royal jobs, the children, giving the children new royal jobs and new royal honors. It just seems like I wonder whether Charles has actually just lost his mind a little bit. I mean, genuinely, I really do. I don't know what on earth is going on. It's been so the whole Andrew story has been so incredibly badly managed. But you're right to point out that ultimately it does go back to the Queen's indulgence of him. And always, there's a great book by Robert Hardman, who's sort of well-known royal biographer, who said that whenever Andrew would make a deal and say, yeah, I'll agree not to do this, I'll agree not to turn up at this or do that, he'd then go and have lunch with his mother. And as Hardman puts it, try and rearrange the furniture, try and reshape the deal. So, and I'm afraid they let him. And even now, it seems like he's trying to reshape the deal again about leaving Royal Lodge. We're hearing that he's apparently demanded Anne Hall on the Sandringham estate, which is William and Kate's country home. I mean, obviously that is not happening, and it hasn't gone down well. And it's perceived a bit as just him sort of rattling the cage to try and, but it's indicative of the fact that actually, when you look at the cards that Andrew's had over the past 15 years, he's actually played a pretty good hand, right? I mean, he's still got, even once he gets kicked out of Royal Lodge, he's still got like a 6-bedroom house at Sandringham. As I've been, you won't read this in the British papers, but I've been reporting he's going to have a cook, he's going to have a housekeeper, he's going to have a gardener, 6-bedroom house, access to the estate for shooting. Like, it's, I mean, if that's disgrace, I want a bit of it, frankly.
And his daughter being welcomed back into the fold, seemingly, which is just absolutely bizarre when you think about it. I mean, when both of her parents have been, I don't know, perhaps disgraced is not fair for Sarah Ferguson. But she certainly has a few moments, doesn't she?
Oh, I think Sarah has been disgraced. And I think it's, unfortunately, Charles is just very obsessed with trying to portray himself as the great forgiver, the great convener, Charles the merciful, Charles who, the Christian, and all these kinds of things. And it's just backfiring absolutely terribly, because unfortunately, what he is now, he was always going to be a transitional figure, right? He was never going to be having a 50-year reign that was going to define an era like Elizabeth or William. Well, William very much in the frame now to have one of those era-defining reigns. But so Charles was always going to be a transitional figure. Then, of course, the man, I have to say, has had a cursed life in terms of luck. So then he gets cancer, and the expectations of the reign sort of dramatically concertina. Instead of people talking about 15, 20 years, it's more like 5, 7. Do you know what I mean? It's changed dramatically. And now what's happened is that instead of just being remembered as a brilliant transitional figure who eased from Queen Elizabeth to the modernity of Prince William, he's just going to be remembered as the Andrew scandal. That's all this is going to be remembered for. And there's plenty of people who think that it could actually really, really harm the monarchy, could really bring them down. I mean, I don't, for various reasons, but there are plenty of people who do. A.N. Wilson, quite, not a particularly, well, he's quite a traditional kind of thinker, has written quite a lot about how he thinks this could actually bring down the monarchy. And I think that this is the kind of core of it. I think Buckingham Palace would love it. It's a serious allegation. It's a serious thing. They need to get ahead of it.
It's they take, we're supposed to refer to him as ex Prince Andrew or as Andrew Mountbatten from now on, but as you see in this email right here on the screen, and as we're going to see in more emails which have come out today, but are also almost certain to come out if we get more and more of these Epstein files over the coming months, which I think, judging by the atmosphere in Washington, D.C. right now, we are going to. He's always referred to as Prince Andrew in those, you know. And when you look at the fact that he set up his own email, or I guess maybe had Eugenie set it up for him to have the Duke as his like little name that shows on the email. First of all, it's just absolutely toe-curlingly cringeworthy, isn't it? To have referred to yourself as that. But also, every time one of these is shown on TV screens, in newspaper articles around the world, it's another dagger in the heart of the monarchy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, he'll always be Prince Andrew to Facebook and to Google and to SEO search, you know, like I'm calling him ex-Prince Andrew. Like if I started calling him, like, just to be totally frank, if I called him Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, he wouldn't show up in the SEO search. Do you know what I mean? So like
we tried with Duchess Catherine for a while, didn't we? But that nobody knew who we were talking about.
Yes, moved on for Catherine, the Princess of Wales. So that's great. Nico, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go because I know you've got a busy day ahead with loads of stuff going on in DC. But we're very lucky to have you. And may I just please quickly remind you, please like, please subscribe. We're getting very close to the magic 10,000 subscribers, at which we're going to have some special celebration that Ben's going to organize. Don't know what it is, but it's going to involve cool things happening on your screen and emojis. And we're very excited about that. And obviously the Substack at Royalist, and Nico Hines, Global Editorial Director of Daily Beast. Fantastic to have you. Thank you very much. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to click this button and end the screen. So keep looking at your camera for one more moment. Goodbye.